everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to discuss epidemiology, which is one of the most important chapters, specifically for UKMLA or PLAB, whatever you would like to call it. Okay, what is the strategy of applying these types of study? We usually abide by the blinding strategy. The blinding strategy tries to decrease any bias in the results. So we try to use different types of blinding. Single blinding is the first type, double blinding is the second type, triple blinding is the third type. Single blinding means that I, as a doctor, know that this patient is taking a placebo, and I know that the other patient called B is taking the new drug. Okay, so it's single blinding. Only the patient doesn't know that whether he is on the placebo or whether he is on the new treatment. The drawbacks of this method is that there's a chance event of about 15% or less. A chance event means that there is some coincidence that happened during the study that led to this patient opting out of the study, just withdrawing themselves. Okay, like for example, the passing away of someone, or there's a certain effect on him that he doesn't like, so she's trying to withdraw themselves from the study. The second drawback of single blinding is the breaking down of the double blind, which happens in a chance of about 25% or less. The breaking of a double blind means that somebody knew something. There is a certain patient who has been aware that he's the one taking the placebo and the other one is taking the drug. So they started blaming us as doctors. Why am I taking the placebo? Why is the other one taking the new drug? And so on. So there is the breaking of this blinding method that we are trying. Next, we have the double blinding. The double blinding means that the doctor doesn't know who's taking the placebo and who's taking the new drug, and also the patients do not know whether they are the ones who are taking the new drug or the placebo. Okay? This type of blinding we usually bring about a third party. There are other people who are basically controllers, and they assign the doctors to the patients without both of them knowing whether this patient has been taking the placebo or has been taking the new treatment. So the only party who knows are these controller group who have been managing the groups and managing who takes the placebo and which doctor is assigned to which patient. Okay, and then third, we have the triple blinding, where we refrain from having a third party as a control group, as a controller people. No, we start having computer aided randomized trial, where the computer randomizes who takes the placebo and who takes the new drug and which doctor is assigned to who. So there is no one who knows which is which. Okay, no doctor knows which patient is taking the placebo or which patient is taking the new drug. The patient themselves do not know whether they are taking the placebo or the new drug, and there is no third party who knows about both of them. Okay, what problems can we face during these certain studies? First, we have the bias. Bias means that there is a certain favor towards a certain result. Like, for example, selection bias. Selection bias, it means that we have been choosing people for the study who are, for example, GPA more than 3.5 in their university grades. Okay, this is a selection bias. I decided to select a certain group in which I see a certain quality. Okay. Next, we have confounding bias. Confounding bias means that I have been choosing people as according to a certain risk factor which turned out to be a wrong risk factor. For example, I'm choosing people who have been diagnosed with COPD and they are marathon runners. So I'm trying to see whether marathon running affects the lung up to the person being affected by COPD. Although it turned out that running is not a risk factor for COPD. Okay. Third, we have confirmational bias. The confirmational bias means that I only make room for the part in the conclusion which I favor. Like, for example, we have been saying that metformin has the best results on glycemic control in diabetic type 2. And I'm actually experienced with metformin and I've been prescribing it to my patients. So I'm pretty sure that metformin has the best effectiveness on diabetes type 2. So in a certain study where we're trying to compare metformin to other drugs, I have a bias or an uncontrolled favor towards metformin, that this one has the most effectivity. So for example, if we are plotting the results as effectiveness, metformin 80%, SGLT2 70%, insulin 99%. I'm just going to delete anything that I've heard and I'm only going to share that metformin is effective by 80% because I do have bias towards metformin. Okay. Fourth, we have sampling bias, which is the same as selection bias. It's just related to groups that we are choosing a sample from a certain environment as well. It's actually the same as selection bias. Fifth, we have lead time bias. In lead time bias, I'm usually testing some screening method. Okay, so let's say that people who are diagnosed with aortic stenosis have a life expectancy of 5 years. I have established a new screening method in which I can diagnose aortic stenosis as much as 10 years before this patient dies. Okay, so I'll be biased to myself that I made the life expectancy of this patient longer, where I actually did not. The patient will be diagnosed after 5 years and his life expectancy will be only 5 years. So overall, from this point, he's going to live only 10 years. Okay, so let me say this again, but simpler. We usually screen for hypertension at the age of 50. Okay, and the life expectancy of a hypertensive patient is about 30 years. So usually patients who are diagnosed with hypertension at the age of 50 die by the age of 80. I have invented a new screening method that diagnoses hypertension as much younger as the age of 35. So I'm going to convince myself that I increased the life expectancy of this patient from 30 years to 45 years, when actually this patient is still going to die at 80 years, but they're just going to be diagnosed at 35 years of age instead of being diagnosed at 50 years of age, but still the lifespan is the same. I hope I made this one clear. Next, we have the measurements of knowing the significance of the study, whether it's actually accurate or not, whether it's sensitive, whether it's specific. How can I tell if this study is a good one? Firstly, we have something that we call the p-value. The p-value is a measurement to know whether the result of this study is significant or not. It's usually about 5% or 0.05%. This is the only measurement of mistakes in the study that can be acceptable to say that this study is actually significant. So the mistake percentage should be 5% or less, or 0.05 in decimals. Okay. Next, we have something that we call the central tendency and the standard deviation. Let's say, for example, we have been conducting a study. There is usually a certain range when plotting the results of this study where most of the results lie. Okay, this range that most of the results lie is called central tendency. This one proves that this study is reliable. So, for example, if there's a specific age group selected or a specific number of years that this patient has been affected by this by this disease, for example, and so on. So, okay, so this is what we call a central tendency. Second, we have the standard deviation. The standard deviation is the measure of dispersion of the results. For example, we have been plotting the ranges of random blood sugar levels in pre-diabetic patient. So we started plotting them 100 to 200, 200 to 300, 300 to 400, 400 to 500. Okay? Each range of them is a standard deviation. There's a first standard deviation from 100 to 200, second standard deviation from 200 to 300, third standard deviation from 300 to 400, and so on. Okay, so as more there is dispersion of the results, this means that this study is actually accurate. Usually, the first standard deviation should be equal to 68% of the results, and the second standard deviation should include 95% of the results, and the third standard deviation should include 99.7% of the result. Okay, this is the percentage of the results in which we should see the first, second, and third standard deviation to say that these are accurate ranges of random blood sugar levels, for example. Okay, in interpretation of tests that include results that have been plotted on a graph, we usually calculate four numbers. First, the mode. The mode is the most common result that we have been taking. Let's say that we are testing the fasting blood sugar level of diabetic type 2 patients. Okay, and the most common result was 128. Okay, so this is the mode of this study. The mode is 128. Okay, second, we have the mean. The mean is the average value. Let's say that the upper limit of these fasting blood sugar levels was 200 and the lower limit was 99. Okay, so there's a 101 difference. Okay, the mean between them is about 149. Okay, then we will say the mean or the mean value or the average value of this study is 149. So it's safe to say that the average fasting blood sugar level of a type 2 diabetic person is 149. Okay? Third, we have the median. The median is the value at the middle once you do an ascending distribution of the numbers. Okay? Let's say we have 100, 120, 130, 140, 150. So if we put them in order, then we will find that the median is the value which is at the middle, which in this case will be 130. Okay, so this is the median value. We usually divide the distribution into two equal parts where there is two numbers before this number and two numbers after this number in this case. Okay, we plotted 5 numbers from 100 to 150. So 130 is exactly at the middle where there is 2 values before and 2 values after. We don't care if there are 5 values. We only care that the median value divides the numbers or the results equally, like 10 values before and 10 values after. Okay, lastly, we have the range where we calculate the highest plotted result minus the lowest plotted result. Okay, let's get to the next one. How do we measure the effectivity of a certain drug? We measure something called number needed to treat. The number needed to treat is how many people do I need to give the drug in order for one person to be cured. Okay, let's say, for example, we give SGLT2 inhibitors to diabetic cardiac failure patients. Okay, how many patients do I need to prescribe SGLT2 inhibitors so that I can have only one person who has been cured from diabetes and heart failure? Let's say, for example, that I give this drug to 150 patients in the hospital. There are 15 of them who has been cured. So the number needed to treat is 150 patients in order to get 15 patients to be cured. So logically, as much lower this number gets, then the more effective this drug is. Let's say, for example, a drug needs to be given to 50 patients only to cure about 20 patients. This is a highly effective drug. So we needed, we know an effective drug where the number needed to treat is low. Okay, how do we calculate the number needed to treat? We do 1 divided by the absolute risk reduction. Okay, the result will be equal to the number needed to treat. Okay, which is a marker of the effectivity of the drug. Okay, so the lower the number needed to treat, the more effective is this drug. Okay, let's get into the number needed to harm. The number needed to harm is the same as the number needed to treat, but it actually measures the side effects of this patient. For example, this drug needs to be taken by 100 patients so that 3 of them can develop diarrhea. Okay, so as more as this number, this means that this drug is more effective. Okay, so whenever we have, for example, a drug that has the number needed to harm about 1,000 people to have been taking this drug and only 2 become affected with the AKI, for example, then this means this is a highly effective drug. Okay, number needed to harm is the same, but it's actually measuring the side effect. So the more this number is, the more effective this drug, or the more safe this drug, the safer this drug. Okay, last we have 2 issues. First is the confidence interval, and second is the sensitivity and the specificity. The confidence interval is where there are multiple studies on the same issue. Okay, let's say, for example, each of us in their own country is trying to see how effective metformin is on diabetes type 2. So each one of us in their own hospitals are conducting a study to see whether on a span of 10 years these patients' fasting blood sugar level gets better or gets lower by the prescription of metformin, for example. So there is usually a confidence interval point where there is a certain range or a certain interval that most of the results of all the countries rely inside. Okay, the more there is a common results between us, the more this proves that this study is actually accurate and that all of us are doing the same study by the same technique. Okay, let's say that one more time. The confidence interval, it means that there are multiple studies about the same issue, but the most common results, the most common plotted results on the graph lie within the same range in my country and in yours and in theirs. Okay, so there are multiple countries that are bringing up the same results upon the same interval. So this means that this study is actually accurate and that all of us are using the same technique to measure this type of variable. Okay, let me remind you that usually the number needed to treat will lie inside this range, the confidence interval range. Okay, the number needed to treat will always rely in this range, and this will mean that this study is actually accurate. This range will also help us to eliminate the inaccurate results that are in two extremities, whether it's very high or very low. It's not within the confidence interval range, okay? It can help us eliminate unreliable results. Let's get into the sensitivity and specificity issue. Sensitivity is a measure of something for screening. So if we need some screening method, what would you like it to be? More false positive or more false negative? No, definitely I'd like to have high true positives and low false negatives. Why would I? Because when I'm doing a screening, my aim is to diagnose whether this person has disease or no. My aim is to eliminate that this person is diseased, because it's going to be a very big trouble if this person has a negative result on my test and then it turns out that they are actually diseased. Okay, so I want to highly eliminate that this person doesn't have a disease. Okay, so I very much need to have highly sensitive true negative. Okay, the negatives or the false negatives should be very low. Okay, so that there is no one who will pass by and do the screening test and then has a negative result while they're actually diseased. Okay, so in sensitive tests, we need to have low false negative. Okay, how do we calculate the sensitivity for any test? We bring the results of the true positive and we divide them by the number of true positive plus the number of false negatives. If the false negative is low, then the sensitivity is high. If this false negative is high, then the sensitivity is low. Let's get into the specificity. The specificity is designed for diagnosis, not screening. I do not want to eliminate that this person is diseased. I would like to confirm that this person is diseased. Okay, so what I need in specificity is that this test should be specific to the disease. So the true positives should be very high and the true negatives should be also very high. Because here I would like to diagnose the disease. I want to confirm the disease. So the test has to be specific. Okay, so how do I calculate the specificity? I bring the true negative over the true negative plus the false positive. Okay, and the less false positive there is, the more highly specific this test is. The less false positive there is, the high specific this test is, because it actually diagnosed the people, and the positive results that turned out to be negative are low. So I'm not actually depleting my resources. Okay, if it's highly specific, then the true positive are actually high and the false positive are low. Okay, let's get into the positive predicted value and negative predicted value in which we measure the sensitivity and specificity. The positive predicted value is the true positive over the true positive plus the false positive. I'm trying to know how many positive results were actually positive. Okay, this is the positive predicted value. The negative predicted value, I'm trying to know the opposite. How many true negatives were actually negative. Okay, so I bring the true negative over the true negative plus the false negative. So out of all the negatives, which one were actually negative? Okay, this is a measure of sensitivity and specificity. Lastly, I have the accuracy. The accuracy is A plus D over A plus B plus C plus D. How do I measure this? A is the diseased group on the medication. B is the non-diseased group on the medication, C is the diseased group on the placebo, and D is the non-diseased group and on the placebo. Okay, it's the same ABCD that we said before. So basically you add the group with the disease and the medication, plus the group who is not diagnosed with the disease and not on the new medication, over the whole group. Okay, and then you come up with a result which resembles the accuracy of this drug. Okay. Lastly, we have 3 measurements that I'd like to let you know about because they frequently come in the exam. First, we have the index. Index is the first patient to cause an outbreak. Like, for example, when HIV first started affecting humans, we said that it has been transmitted from a certain species of monkeys into humans. Okay, let's call the first infected person by HIV Sam. Okay, so Sam is the index of HIV. He has been the first person to be infected by HIV directly from the monkeys. Okay, second, we have the primary case. The primary case is Sam also, but if he infected someone else. If Sam, for example, is in a relationship with Maria, if Sam infected Maria and caused the disease to be passed on, then this means that Sam has been a primary case to us. He is the first person to cause infection to another one. Okay, let's get into the secondary case. The secondary case is Maria. It's the first person to be infected from a diseased person, not from the direct source. Okay, so Maria is the secondary case. Sam, before infecting anyone, he's an index. After infecting Maria, he's a primary case. Okay? Lastly, we have a primary attack rate, in which we measure the diseased people who have been exposed to a risk factor over the whole population multiplied by 100. Okay? So these are diseased people who has been exposed to a risk factor over the whole population times 100. Okay, this is the primary attack rate. The secondary attack rate is the number of patients who are diseased, who are already diseased, over the total number of people exposed to the risk factor, multiplied by 100. So we're trying to measure how many people did this risk factor succeed to lead them to be diseased. Okay, so that's it all about the epidemiology chapter. I hope I really made it easy for you. I really enjoyed this this lecture. So I hope that you also enjoy it with me and that it has been easy to understand. I'm Myrna Armanius, and today we discussed epidemiology for UKMLA. See you next time. Bye-bye.